the first slightly unusual thing about Grimshaw is that we have three kind of design centres. I mean, like lots of our competitors have offices over the world, but they're just project offices.
Yes.
But the sort of the mothership definitely does everything and just dictates.
Yeah.
We have actually more. We've got about 18 partners, and because we all came out of the same place, we still trust each other, shall we say. So, New York does its own design, we do our own design, and then Sydney and Melbourne, constituting the Australian operation, they do their designs. We talk a bit, but it's not like something's designed here and we tell New York this is how it should be.
Right. So New York office is involved in Asian area, or just you can cross over with each other?
Well, no, we're still how to do Asia. It's very interesting. We've just won a huge project in KL, actually, something called TRX with Lend-Lease. So we will probably have to have a presence in Singapore or KL, one or other. And there have been. I've done 4 projects in China.
Oh, really?
In mainland China, but none of them have been built. One was supposed to start, and then whereas the New York office has got 2 projects in China as well. So we're still kind of trying to work it out how to do the Far East.
See. How did you find out working with Chinese? I mean, I've been in Beijing for 1 year in the site office. It was really tough experience for me.
Yeah. I can't say. I feel a bit used, actually. Of all the 4 projects, I mean, to give you an example, the last one, I won't name names because we're being recorded here, but I feel we were exploited. Our name was bandied about to help this client negotiate a good contract with the government to buy a beautiful site.
Yes.
And they were all saying, Grimshaw, the people that did the Eden project are coming to this town, they're going to do something wonderful. And then as soon as they signed it, they just told us they didn't need us anymore. And that it was supposed to be a resort for traditional Chinese medicine, where meditators, a place of beauty, beautiful modern buildings and landscape around this lake. All they want to do is build holiday villas. And so the thing I find really difficult about China is you never really, as an outsider, you don't understand what's going on.
Yeah, right. Actually, they use the international well-known architects to raise the price of the property there.
That's right.
I mean,
that's
what
it is.
Shocked.
Maybe we just haven't been lucky and we haven't met the outward-looking, forward-thinking clients. That we've been unlucky. And we certainly haven't done any proper major government jobs. So maybe that will change. But I had a Mandarin speaker on my team, but he couldn't get through.
Yeah, see.
It's not just language.
I completely understand.
In fact, that last project, the main guy, the client representative, which is why I got really excited about it, because he spoke fluent English. He actually he lives in California and there and back.
Yeah.
But it's not about language.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I completely understand.
Which project were you working on?
I was working on Datong Art Museum. It was under construction, and then Chongqing couple of projects, but then because of the politics, it all cancelled. And then I was in Beijing office, so I was working on some mixed use in Beijing area. That's pretty much it.
But they don't. Well, there's now since that thing with Paul Andre and Airport de Paris, they don't allow foreign architects to be responsible for anything anymore. There has to be the local institute.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, they have a strong power there. It's like a gangster inside.
Yeah.
It's quite difficult to work.
Yeah. So that's us in Asia. So we're going gently through the easier places like Hong Kong, Singapore, KL.
That's smart. Yeah.
And the KL project is Lend-Lease, with whom we have a very good relationship out of Australia. So.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay. Well, I wanted to ask about some brief experience about your practice and some products. involved?
Well, it's a bit very where to start, what to tell you.
I mean, how long have you been here?
In this office?
Yeah.
Well, you know the whole practice history.
Yeah.
I'm actually I've been here in this practice for 34 years. So, yeah.
34 years.
Next to Nick Grimshaw himself, I'm the oldest,
You're the
most
legend.
senior old timer. When I joined, there were 12 people in the office,
Wow.
and now we've got over 400. So we moved into this office about 8 years ago.
Right.
We used to be all the architects have moved to Clerkenwell now. There are only one or two. Foster's still at Riverside, and Rogers are moving as well. I don't know if you know.
Really?
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
So. And the big change was we are actually, we still bear Nick's name, but we are what is called in this country a limited liability partnership.
Yes.
With a very flat structure. So up to 8 years ago, maybe a bit with Nick. I was a director, but I had a minority shareholding, and Nick owned the company like a family business, and that's no longer the case. Because the ownership is shared across 18 partners, and I think our big strength is that we have lots of individuals with their own interests and connections all working away in different parts,
Yes.
and everything doesn't have to get funneled through this one tight bottleneck. And at the moment, in terms of agreement on where we should go, we agree because we've come from the same place. So we're being very careful about how to make that continue, because it'd be very easy in 20 years' time for it to get difficult with so many people that need to agree about things. But the strong point is then we can lots of us can all the clients can have a much more personal relationship. There's none of this. I have you can imagine in some offices, I have to. The client thinks he's agreed something with the architect, but then it goes suddenly the architect will say, "Well, I'm sorry, someone else doesn't agree with me, so we have to do it like this." Which must be very frustrating.
Yes, right.
And we operate more autonomously. Someone would have to really, really seriously go out on a limb like that, and then all the rest of us would have to say, no, hang on, we're not going to do it. But that's never happened so far.
That's good.
Yeah. So that, and then the international reputation came out of a string of projects which were, and we were considered that awful word high-tech architects, and we rose up at the same time as Foster's and Rogers and one or two others. We had a particular. The first project was Waterloo. That roof there. And that was my project.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And then we got this reputation for large span structures. So that is through Waterloo. That led to the Eden project, which is even more famous worldwide. And then that huge roof we did in Frankfurt for the fair. So that's the kind of USP. And if you were to ask anyone around the world about Grimshaw, that's immediately what they think of. But actually, and what we're working very hard to promote is that we undertake a whole wide range of things. Master planning, no one knows we do master planning. I'll show you. I'm just jumping around here.
No worries.
And I keep thinking I'm on a Mac here. I'm not on a Mac. We've just finished this master plan for
Where is that?
This is in Tirana. We won a big international competition. We were up against, all the other competitors couldn't. Grimshaw doing this. There was West 8, Albert Speer and Partners, GMP, Gerkan Mark and Partners, and. Sorry, I don't know how this is set up. So, let's just go back. So this is the existing city is back here, and the mayor wanted to extend a boulevard about nearly 2 kilometers, including a new river crossing. And so this is a big area. So this is now the city planning parameters. We've written all the parameters for all these blocks. We've come up with this idea of a string of pearls, shall we say? Oh no, I haven't got. Sorry, this was the river crossing,
That's amazing.
which is like an outdoor Lido. It's where the boulevard ends,
Yes.
and we thought rather than end with some sort of neoclassical, which is what they actually wanted,
Really?
some big building, we suggested why not have something for the people, a place where you go and because a lot of people in Tirana don't even realise that this river exists.
Really?
Because this has been kind of no man's land. The station is there.
Right.
So it was a very simple idea. It's a wide grand boulevard with we call them living rooms, and each one's different. So that one is a Justice Square. That's this space with the new Palace of Justice. So we did, we were the landscape architects as well. We had someone inside helping us, very particular choice of tree and how it's done locally. So for example, you wouldn't think that was a Grimshaw project,
Yeah.
right?
What a surprise.
Like sports architecture. We're that team over there, Kirsten, who's standing there, is one of my colleagues. She's been responsible for putting a retractable roof over the number 1 court at Wimbledon tennis, and we've done a new master plan for the whole tennis area. What else? We just I don't have a picture of it here. We've done a social housing scheme in the Bronx called Via Verde. Have you heard of that?
No, where is it?
In New York.
New York.
The Bronx is quite a poor area out over the East River, and so this was a philanthropic social housing scheme. Large social, it's won many awards. You grow vegetables on the roof. Let's see if I've got anyway, I've got a picture on here somewhere. I'm just trying to think of all the things that you wouldn't expect Grimshaw to do.
Yeah.
Projects like this. This was sadly we got to the last. We got to the last two. Redesigning the whole of Nine Elms new Covent Garden Market. So this is it's a huge area behind here with the wholesale fruit and vegetable market and the flower market, which is being demolished wholesale, and so we had to create a sort of front end. So this is bringing the sort of high-tech sort of Grimshaw sensibilities to urban placemaking. Right. Let's see what else it would jog my memory. Railway stations. You've probably seen this project. This is Bilma Station in Amsterdam with the timber roof. And this is all. Yeah, this was about 7-8 years ago. It was finished. But right now, as Chris said, we're working on London Bridge, which is a huge rebuilding. We're working on Euston for HS2. For HS2 themselves, helping them prepare the build. We're doing lots of underground projects, so the new Northern Line extension. We're on Crossrail.
Yes.
We're responsible for all the. Actually, I think it's the most interesting package. We are responsible for what's called the inline components. So all the 5 stations below ground, we're responsible for the lining, the advertising, the lighting, the furniture, all the industrial components that make up the line.
That's amazing.
Yeah, difficult. Well, slightly mad because then other architects are having to apply our components to their station, that's the difficult part.
I see.
But
then, do you have any industrial design team here?
Yes, it's fun. We had an industrial, Duncan Jackson and Owen Billings, who have now kind of branched off on their own. So we're building a new team out of the New York office. But yes, we have some industrial designers here as well. Industrial design has been continuing all the way through the process. Like the whole of the Crossrail project was industrial design. But we, for example, we designed a table for an Italian furniture manufacturer, which was shown at the Milan Fair. So all those things, it's a very important part of our this idea of being interested in the craft of making buildings. That's very central to what we do. What else can I tell you?
Well, the very first project, I mean, when I was a student, I was kind of very, very impressed about the Sidor Expo project. Because it was a mind-blowing idea about the water walls.
The water wall, yeah. That was, what was, looking back, we were probably one of the first of the high-tech crew to stress sustainability as an issue.
Yes.
There's that famous sketch of Nick's. I've got it here. Sorry, it'll take
No
me too long
worries.
to find it.
Yeah.
You've probably seen it in the book. The idea of using the water to cool the building. Sadly, all the wackiest ideas, like the tanks at the back full of water and the pumps, were supposed to be donated to the third world, to this charity water aid, so that to help villages in Africa pump water from the aquifers. But then the government decided to sell it to some.
That's sad.
So that building is still sitting in some yards in West London. And, he wanted to rebuild it and make some theme park here, but it never happened. That was happening exactly at the same time as Waterloo. It was that time.
Do you have any other projects like that? I mean, using very innovative idea to apply.
Well, have you seen this one? Sadly, it hasn't happened, but it's something I keep pressing. Have you heard of the Las Palmas Water Theatre? So that's what it looks like. This is where it would have been. So Las Palmas is one of the Canary Islands.
Yeah.
And the project was this is the moment as big container port, and there's big competition between Las Palmas and Tenerife. Tenerife is getting all the tourists, so they wanted the tourists to come back to here. So they wanted to move the container port away, make this commercial marina surrounded by, hotels and residential, and a new marine park.
Right.
That was the master plan, but that was the brief. But onto that, we suggested this idea of a water theatre. It's quite a long story. The big problem here is fresh water. If they want to increase the number of tourists here, they're going to have to import fresh water to drink.
Right.
So the idea was to here you have two points. First of all, you get trade wind, so the wind always blows in one direction. And the second is that these islands are volcanic, so it goes very steeply down to the ocean bed. So what you do is, I can't remember how many slides I've got. Right, here we are. So here's the side of Las Palmas. So with a pipe going into the sea, you can get down to sea temperatures of sort of 8 degrees, really cold water.
Yes.
So what you do is you pump that cold water up into a grid of... So what I'm about to show you is a little piece of this wall. So the cold water, it goes through these tubes. The warm, the moisture-laden air which is blowing from the sea
make condensation.
Exactly. You create fresh water here, and then these are solar panels. These actually adjust the amount of air that comes through. The water, once it's heated up a bit, it gets blown back to make this absolutely like 99% saturated air. And then the idea was we call it a water theatre because it's by the water, you can see an outdoor performance, but you're looking at the drinking water of the island being created in front of your
amazing.
eyes. Yeah. So we're just waiting to find another island client that has a similar kind of set of circumstances.
Oh, that's sad. Why it didn't go through?
It was stopped. The whole process was, there was a competition which we put ideas in for, and the municipality in Las Palmas didn't follow the correct rule because they're part of Spain.
Yes.
The Spanish architects back home got upset because they didn't follow the proper process. they just invited the architects they wanted to submit.
Oh, right.
And they said, no, there should be a proper competition open to everyone. So the competition had to be abandoned.
Oh, that's
so,
sad.
yeah, this is very sad.
But I think it's really good project. You will find another
It
client.
will,
I'm sure.
there will be a moment. So I'm just
Yeah.
waiting. Someone will walk in. It'll happen.
Wow.
What else? There's another one like that. While we're talking about projects that I got really excited about this, which was in the. It was a mixed-use tower for the Middle East, where we, on the basis of a vertical master plan. So each one, so the only thing that's these are all different uses. So that's a hotel. That's a hotel. The yellow is residential, the blue is office, and this is a shopping mall.
Yep.
And the only thing that connects them is the transportation and the what you have in the streets. So that's power, water, telephones.
Right.
All right. And every part that's otherwise self-sufficient. So all its plant is in a kind of wafer here and here, and the project has the principle of that because the sun is so strong in these
Yes,
parts of the
yes.
world, you can have a central space with the light coming from the side. So it's built up. Actually, is there a plan? Yes, we are. So the light comes into that space through four ways, right? And these are all the different uses. And and obviously it's borrowing from traditional Islamic architecture that you are very careful about how the light comes in. And oops.
So is it gonna be built?
Now, this is the other one that I'm looking for a client. This was the most tragic. We were commissioned by this Middle East developer to do a tower for this position.
Where is it?
It was in Dubai.
Dubai.
And it's funny. They came here, this client, and they were wearing Western suits. And we had the interview, had the conversation. We thought these are bright people. Yeah, okay, let's go for it. And then went over there, and they're wearing, they're wearing their Arab gear.
And change
And the old man who was basically called the shots just didn't get it. Why doesn't he go, where are the lights? And he just didn't get it. And I was a third of the way through the presentation, and I could just see in his eyes he's not with it. He doesn't understand. There's a huge disconnect. The more I went on about plugging into traditional culture, the more he lost it. He wanted something Western and glitzy.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I work with a project in Kuwait for airport, and then National Bank of Kuwait. It's under construction now. It's really different as well. Quite difficult to expect.
It's just funny. So we have these super inflated ideas about other people's cultures that we forget that they're at a different point in history and
that's why they hire the Western architects.
That's why they go to a Western architect.
Because
And we're saying we don't want to put a glass and aluminium thing in the middle of the desert. Anyway. You've seen I'll just show you the latest projects that have been finished lately.
Yeah.
You've seen this.
Yes.
So this is the
beautiful project.
Yeah, the New York office have been doing this. We set up the New York office to do this project. It took a long time, and so this. It's great. It was hard work, but it's the first piece of public infrastructure that's been done in New York for ages. Yeah, it's been very well received. I love the idea that it was built because when they built all these subway lines, the builders didn't want them to meet. They wanted them to be completely separate. They didn't like the idea of having interchanges. So this is the first interchange in the subway system of Manhattan. Yeah.
Why is that? Why they don't?
Well, it's commercialism. I'm building a line. I don't want someone else's passengers. I don't want people going off to another line. I want to just have my line.
That's funny. Wow, this is beautiful.
And we worked with. So this is our concept, but then we employed Jamie Carpenter, a sort of a light artist, to work on these panels and to look about how how they would reflect the light. So there's a very subtle iridescence about the way the light, and we did lots of studies It's a unique position. You see, this is a listed protected building, so no one would ever have been able to build a big, tall building over the top.
Right.
And this is actually what made the project,
Yes.
because we were able to use this bit of sky to punch the light really deep down into the ground.
Yes.
We've finished. This is an old building which we've renovated. It's Queens, meaning Queens in New York. It's a part of. It's again on the other side of the river from Manhattan to New York. It's a kind of art and typical museum, shall I say, which we created a new interior for. Then this is the airport for St. Petersburg. You've seen that? Bukovo. So this is also we're devising. This building has a few very simple moves, and I think we've got the big things right, because it's not a project that we worked on with all our people right the way up to the last minute. We won the competition, we did the design up to a kind of advanced scheme, maybe with a few key details, and then it went. We didn't do anything for 3 years. And then we went down there, and they said, "Well, they followed the drawings." So when that's different. I mean, we couldn't have done Waterloo, for example.
Yes.
There's no way we could have done Waterloo at that distance, because Waterloo depends on these fine crafted details.
Yes.
So this is about this. It's all about this sort of slightly goldy, folded plane which we defined. And all the other crap happens up above, and it was all about catching the. They have very low sun angles in St. Petersburg, catching that. Was that it? Can you give me any others?
Well, because you're in this office for such a long time, 34 years.
34 years.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm curious about. Personally, how do you feel about the change of architecture industry or practice?
In the world of architecture.
Yeah.
Oh, lots of things. First, I'm slightly alarmed by the sort of. There's been a retreat of architects in terms of their influence to a smaller and smaller and smaller territory.
You feel that?
I do, definitely.
Yeah, I do as well.
It's there's the centre of the territory will always be protected, because ultimately we're creative people and we can imagine things that other people can't imagine. But the bit that terrifies me is all the early Grimshaw buildings were heavily informed by a few architects really getting immersed with the contractors and learning from the contractors, the people that make it, not just the contractors, but the people that work for the contractors, the steel worker, the concrete specialist, the person that knows all about how to drill holes in glass, rubber, all these things. In the early days, we were kind of almost like material fetishists, We were, and those kind of relationships are very hard to have now. Because, this country, definitely, and somewhere like, working in St. Petersburg, even less so, you have, first of all, more and more projects are design-build, so that means you only go up to here, and then you draw as much as you can, and then there's a big contractual line. And if you carry on working on the project, either you're sitting with the client, or you're working with the builder. But even if you're working and sometimes you're working for both. There have been 2 or 3 projects we've done here where they've split us into 2, and so we're responsible for compliance monitoring and helping the builder do the drawings. But they won't let us anywhere near those specialists, because the builder is no longer a builder; he's just a manager. And they go and also the money, they don't let us anywhere near juggling the money anymore. You don't get told, well, we've allowed this much for this element, this much for this element, this much for this element. You just sit in a meeting and someone says, well, we've talked to the client and we can't afford that. Whereas 20 years ago, I could sit there and say, well, I don't believe you, show me. That's nonsense. You've counted that twice. You haven't understood our drawings. We can't do that anymore. So there's that. on a completely different. I mean, it's been quite interesting. You know, 34 years, architectural fashion has gone, gone around the spiral two and a half times. So when I joined Nick, that it was right in the middle of postmodernism. And, Michael Graves, Terry Farrell, people like that, Robert Stern, and then suddenly we became hugely fashionable. There's a golden 10 years from Waterloo and Seville up to Eden, where work was just flooding in and everything. We were just the top architects, and then suddenly, and then this is really tough. Then suddenly you realise you're not fashionable anymore, and that everyone's going somewhere else. So we've still got that reputation, and it's kind of global, but here somehow in the UK, completely new ethos, and we suddenly, from making all the lists for competition for the top projects, we're saying, what about us? We're still here. Yeah. But you were so last decade.
I can't believe that.
Yeah. That's what's happening. And then there's been a little bit of a twist round. You've seen there was a documentary series on BBC 4 which called the Modern Worlds, which we were in, and there's been a kind of resurgence, sort of acknowledgement that British high tech was something actually quite unique, and so it's, and maybe it's not quite so extreme. So it's. I mean, what we have, it's much. The other thing is, it's much harder for a young architect to set up their own business now. I mean, there are lots of people that have left here that have tried it. I mean, the guy, Stuart, this building next door, have you seen it? The Saatchi and Saatchi are going to move into it. It's been designed by Stuart Pearcey. Now, he worked for me in from 95 to 98. And then he set up on his own, and this is his first building, right, of any size whatsoever. Right, that's how long he's taken, and he's really committed. He's really good at networking. He does all the right things. That's how long it takes, and he's the lucky one. There are many others that haven't even never done a building this big.
Why is that?
Well, it's much harder. First of all, there are more people like us. Secondly, clients are much more risk averse. So if you, like for any major institutional client, like say a university commissioning a new university building in this country, you'll get a series of questions you have to answer. Have you got £10 million limited professional indemnity insurance? Show me 3 equivalent projects you've done in the last 3 years. Give me references of, and if you're just trying to do the first one, it's chicken and egg. How do you do the first one? So it's harder and harder for younger firms to find someone that trusts them.
Right.
So in a sense, that's good for a large established office like this. So that's the balancing act that we've got to maintain. We've got to keep the ethos of the place young. We've got to encourage fresh ideas coming through. It'd be terribly, when you get to my age, the easiest thing is just to say, oh, well, I did something like that 15 years ago. Let's just do this. Right, done. You've got to stop yourself doing that. And I think when we get it right here, there's a kind of there's a kind of journey you go on, and if you don't have preconceived ideas and the result is good, you're actually surprised about it yourself. How did we get that? God, because it's a kind of battle of ideas, and sometimes the ideas merge along together and make an even stronger one, and then at the end you get something that's really robust, something that is kind of nobody can challenge, not even the money man or the politics man or the architects here who say, is it beautiful, is it poetic? Yeah.
How about working with young people in the office for you?
That's great.
That's great.
That's great. Makes me feel that I'm not that too old myself.
I didn't know it's really hard to set up new practice in London because.
So people still do it, but
Yeah, because it's
when I see someone breaking through and emerging, I think, God, that's amazing. It was definitely easier and before. I mean, you know, I trained in the 70s. And then I remember when I started working in offices, talking to engineers and quantity surveyors who had their careers through the 60s and the early 70s. And even then they were saying, oh, it used to be so much different. So because in the 60s there's much more government work, people didn't work so hard. Also, the architect was God. In those days, you know, the architect was responsible for the cost. There were quantity surveyors, but certainly for project management.
Yes.
And you know, if the architect walked on site and said, you know, take it down, you know, that's not my building, that really counted for something. And that, you know, well, there was something wrong with that too. There was too much of an arrogance, but it was certainly much easier to start off.
Do you have many private clients rather than the public clients?
Many more private clients than public. Well, particularly in this country, the public sector is very small now.
I mean, private clients are quite cost-oriented somehow, I think.
Well, not always. I mean, they're you know, the people that have sovereign wealth behind, you know, like lots of projects are funded by Qatar or by, and that master plan in Albania was paid for by the Kuwaiti sovereign wealth fund. They just donated some money because they wanted to improve relations between Albania, which they see as an up-and-coming, you know, Albania is coming from nowhere. And so they thought, well, property values here can only rise, so let's give them a few £1 million. And so our fees were paid directly by Kuwait, not by the Albanians. That's why we got paid. Otherwise, it would.
Lucky.
Yeah. So on the projects, if anything, those projects, it's the reverse. It's the senseless squandering of money because they don't care. Or it's like that guy with that, you know, I was preaching sustainability to that guy for that tower. You know, and what's that all about? You know, plenty of energy around here.
Yeah, don't need to save the energy, come on.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's when it's, universities are very, very careful about money. Commercial developers, of course, too. But then depends, you know. To build, I mean, we built 3 buildings for the City of London, office buildings. So the budgets there are quite, you know, you would spend £2,000 a square metre, maybe more. On a tower, £2,500 a square metre. It's a lot of money. Compared to if you were doing that in somewhere in Holland or Italy or somewhere, that would be considered a huge budget. You know, there they build their buildings for half that.
So, I mean, in your practice, do you really aim to get more projects overseas, like in Asia?
But slowly. I think all the it's not you know, we've never bought another company, although we could. We'll never do that, and only once have we brought in a partner straight into partner level from another practice. We like to kind of let people emerge, develop their own networks, and then sort of slowly. So both, I mean, as I said, the New York office happened because with Arab we won that bulk of our competition. Worked on it in London for a year. Then the client said, "Come on, you better be over here. We're going to take it away from you." So Andrew Wally just said, and 2 others said, "Okay." And they just packed and started, and then slowly, you know, they carried on designing that, and then they won another competition, and so on and so forth. And now they got, you know, they've all got their green cards, and they're there. And at the same time, Keith Bruce went to. We won that. You know, the Melbourne Southern Cross Station, the one with the.
Yes.
You know, so there was a similar kind of story there, and then they grew a few routes, and so Keith is the one that's now doing through his contacts that he's made in Australia, we've got the thing that's called TRX in Malaysia, which will eventually happen. Well, they want us to. It's such a big project. We'll have to establish a presence, probably in Singapore, which will then grow. Rather than, I think that's much more satisfactory than, well, say my experience in China, just getting on a plane, living in a hotel for a week, and then coming back and then wondering what's next.
Okay, I think that's enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, from my side. Well, just personal question.
Yeah.
What's the challenging thing for you as an entrepreneur?
Now or
Ever.
most challenging thing. Most challenging thing.
It's not really much.
The most challenging thing here in London is because this is kind of, I kind of feel this is centre of gravity of world art. I mean, the centres of world architecture everywhere, but it's particularly hot here.
Yeah.
And the competition is just so. When in the mid-80s, there were a few really good practices, and there are a lot of commercial practices. And it was, now there's so many good architects. You really have to fight for everything so much harder. That's the biggest challenge for us, and probably for everyone we're competing against.
But does it mean the standard goes up now and then?
I think the general standard
Yeah.
in all sectors, the general standard office building compared to what there was around in the early 80s. It's another world, There's and in high-end residential, and actually also in social housing. The sad thing in this country is that housing for sale out of London, those horrible red brick roads, that is still dreadful in general standard. No, but I imagine in the next decade there'll be an improvement there too, because it's beginning to happen. It's so people like Foster's, Rogers, us, we managed to, once we're up and flying, there was a period where we could just trade on anyway. Here we are, and we can't do that anymore. We can't take anything for granted.